A long time ago, in a place in Oklahoma, USA, the land was vast and the population sparse. Only the beautiful nature and a group of local Native Americans called the Osage inhabited the area. These Osage people were quite poor, but as fate would have it, with the sudden eruption of uncontrollable oil wells, all the Osage became overnight millionaires. What's crucial is that this happened during the First World War when everywhere needed oil. The story unfolds against this backdrop, and the protagonist is named Ernest. Ernest is a recently discharged soldier returning from the just-ended World War I. He comes to Oklahoma to seek refuge with his uncle Hale, who has prospered in the oil business and owns a flourishing 80-acre farm. However, he is not content with his current life. Hale tells him that despite the apparent vastness of their land, it will eventually be depleted. According to Hale, only oil is an endless source of wealth. When oil was first discovered here, only the Osage had the rights to it. However, knowing the inevitability of life and death, ancestral rules were established. The oil rights were distributed based on lineage. If a parent passed away, the right to extract oil would be inherited by the children, but only pure-blooded Osage were entitled to this right. Strangely enough, this led to an unusual phenomenon where proud white people flocked here seeking riches. However, their intentions were often dubious, and it was clear from their words that they were not here with good intentions. Young men like Ernest come here with the intention of wooing wealthy Osage women. If they manage to marry into the family, they'll have access to wealth that can last for generations. Ernest lives up to expectations and quickly sets his sights on an Osage woman named Mollie. With a target in mind, Hale is delighted. However, Ernest is no ordinary guy. He works as a driver during the day and hangs out with questionable friends to engage in some illicit activities at night. In those times, local law enforcement was virtually non-existent, making it easy for them to carry out their activities. Their targets were usually unfaithful men, who dared not report the crimes. If caught by an Osage wife, these men would find it harder than death. This also reveals another aspect of Ernest, his significant ambitions. Soon, good news arrives. Ernest and Mollie tie the knot, celebrating their wedding on a grassy field. Outsiders often find it challenging to adapt to Osage wedding ceremonies, especially considering the challenges of becoming an in-law. Just as the wedding concludes, the next day, they attend a funeral. The deceased woman is none other than Mollie's sister. Mollie has 4 sisters in total, and with the sister's demise, her oil extraction rights pass to her brother-in-law, Bill. Hale informs Ernest that this wealth should have rightfully belonged to him and his wife, Mollie. Now, they have to share a quarter of the acquired wealth. Leaving Ernest somewhat displeased, considering his ambitions. Hale then reveals another secret: Osage are inherently frail and often fall ill, with an average lifespan of only 50 years. This means that with proper planning, all the family's assets will eventually be Ernest's. This revelation sparks a plan within Ernest. Bill acted unusually fast. After Mollie's sister's death, he quickly got involved with Mollie's other sister, Retta. As an Osage with a romantic mind, distinguishing between genuine love and ulterior motives can be challenging. In Ernest's eyes, Bill was clearly after the money. Soon after, another tragedy struck. Mollie's second sister passed away, but this time, it wasn't due to illness, it was a murder. What's shocking is that this wasn't the first murder. Homicides had been occurring frequently, with the local law enforcement essentially non-existent, especially for the Osage. People were afraid to go out at night, as losing a life meant losing the rights to oil extraction. Initially, the innocent Osage believed these deaths were accidents. It wasn't until over 100 deaths that the chief realized something was seriously wrong. He called a meeting to discuss the current situation. The chief knew that white people were killing Osage for their wealth, but in the current circumstances, the chief felt helpless, as the police were not taking action. In desperation, the chief secretly offered rewards for valuable information and sent a trusted couple to Washington, D.C., seeking support from the government. Meanwhile, Mollie took matters into her own hands and hired a private detective. Hale, in the meeting, promised an additional reward for those providing leads, with the condition that they must inform him first. Hale's actions could mean a few things. Either he genuinely wants to help and improve his image among the Osage, or it's the opposite. He hired someone to kill Mollie's sister to prevent the chief from receiving useful information, hiding his involvement in hiring someone to commit murder. The next incident occurred when a detective, likely the couple sent to Washington, D.C., was about to depart but got assassinated, likely to prevent them from investigating the town. Following this, the private detective hired by Mollie arrived in town. Investigating this murder isn't difficult at all. On the day Mollie's sister was killed, there was a conflict between her and Ernest's brother. Their relationship was ambiguous, not officially married, but possibly a couple. The brother had reservations about Mollie's sister, but owing to her wealth, he reluctantly went along with her plans. That night, he took her home, and the next day, she was found dead in the wilderness. Clearly, Ernest's brother was a prime suspect due to reports of him being seen at the bar that night, providing an alibi that cleared him of suspicion. However, another issue arose. Bill was also investigating the true cause of Mollie's sister's death. This complicated matters, as if there was a connection between Ernest's brother and the incident, Bill could expose him and Ernest would be ousted from the life and death struggle. Ernest immediately consulted Hale on what to do next. Hale stated that Bill had become too dangerous as he had already gained a 50% share in the oil extraction rights by marrying, therefore, he must be eliminated. This aligned with Ernest's own desires, as he too coveted the wealth. Ernest then approached a person named Kelsey. Osage people were buried with a lot of gold, silver, and jewelry. Kelsey saw a huge opportunity and decided to engage in tomb robbery with his partner. When Ernest approached him for assistance, Kelsey mentioned that killing a Native American wouldn't be an issue, but Bill was a full-fledged white man. Getting caught would mean a life sentence. This implied that Ernest needed to offer more money, putting him in a bit of a dilemma. Being a son-in-law from a humble background, he had little money. Helpless, he ended up giving Kelsey the sports car Mollie had recently bought for him. An awkward situation unfolded when Ernest didn't genuinely give the car to Kelsey. Instead, he played a trick. And the next day, Ernest went to the insurance company claiming the car had been stolen, seeking compensation. The insurance company, naturally, reported it to the police. Consequently, Kelsey got caught before completing the task. The angriest person about this incident was Ernest's uncle Hale. It was at this moment that Hale revealed a shocking conspiracy. Hale took Ernest to a restaurant. Without warning, he subjected Ernest to a severe beating. Then, with a grotesque expression, he said, "Did you come here to enjoy being a hillbilly just because your looks got you married to Mollie? Your only advantage is being married to her, otherwise, you'd have been kicked out long ago," Hale declared. "For a small amount of money, you went and deceived the insurance company. Now that Kelsey is caught, who will deal with Bill?" At this point, Ernest was puzzled. Why was Hale so agitated? Seeing Ernest's perplexed look, Hale decided to come clean. He had told Ernest before that the farm was not what he truly wanted, oil was the real treasure. He pointed Ernest in a clear direction. Who needed to die now? One was Bill, and the other was the detective hired by Mollie. The rest, Hale would handle himself. Ernest had no choice but to follow Hale's instructions. The next day, the detective was found dead at home, clearly a result of Ernest's involvement. Subsequently, Hale, with Ernest in tow, contacted a hitman named Peter, who suggested using explosives to kill Bill. After some negotiation, they struck a deal. Earlier, Hale mentioned that he would handle the remaining person. It was none other than Henry, the Ernest met before. On their way, Henry confidently claimed ownership of all the oil-rich land because he was Mollie's ex-husband. From this moment on, he became a thorn in Hale's side. Local regulations also stated that even an ex-husband, once married to Mollie, could claim oil extraction rights after her death. In Hale's eyes, he was already a dead man. Hale contacted another hitman and, with just $3,000, reached a deal. Later, using the excuse of inviting Henry to taste his homemade liquor, the hitman led him to the outskirts and shot him dead. Now, only one person remained, Bill. One night, as Ernest and his wife were about to enter sweet dreams, a loud explosion echoed outside. Investigating, they found that Bill's house had exploded. However, from Ernest's expression, there was no sign of joy because he didn't know who Hale might target next or how greedy Hale's intentions were. Would the next victim be himself? After seeing the death of Bill and Mollie's fourth sister, Hale displayed a satisfied smile. The final target was Ernest's wife. Once she died, all the oil fields of the Mollie family would belong to Ernest. Mollie suffered from diabetes and relied on insulin injections to survive. This presented Hale with an opportune moment. He acquired a slow-acting poison, and Ernest was tasked with injecting Mollie. As people around Mollie kept dying, she began suspecting foul play aimed at seizing the family's wealth. However, Mollie never doubted her husband, as Ernest was skilled in deception. He had Mollie firmly under control. Soon, a fortunate coincidence gave Mollie the chance to meet with high-ranking government officials. Having reported the family murders to the authorities before, which went ignored due to Hale's influence over the police, Mollie chose to remain silent. This time was different. The president wanted to meet the state governor. After a group photo, Mollie earnestly pleaded with the president to investigate the murders of her family members, prompting the police to take the matter seriously. From that moment on, the good days for Ernest and Hale were numbered. The FBI got involved due to the sensational case. Investigating the murders was not difficult, given the numerous loopholes at the crime scenes. Soon, the FBI traced Ernest. Tragically, even at this point, Ernest clung to false hope, believing that Hale, with his power, would protect him. He continued resolutely injecting poison into his wife. Meanwhile, Hale began selling off his assets, preparing for an escape route. The cunning Hale first exploited the psychology of criminals, aiming to eliminate all the thugs who had once worked for him so that there would be no witnesses. However, things didn't go as planned. Kelsey survived the police encounter, and when he was later arrested, he became a crucial link. Kelsey implicated Ernest, and eventually, Ernest's psychological defenses crumbled as he turned into a witness with tainted credibility. Many events occurred during this process. Initially, Ernest denied his crimes and was unwilling to accuse his uncle, still holding on to the belief that Hale could handle the situation. It wasn't until a tragic event, the death of his child, that Ernest's mental defenses were completely shattered. He finally understood that Hale hadn't stopped his plan to kill all of Mollie's family members and seize their wealth. There was a detail earlier about Mollie being pregnant, and when this news broke, everyone offered their congratulations, except for Hale, who visibly became angry. Each child born meant a portion of his wealth being taken away. This realization struck Ernest, as he now knew he would eventually meet his end at Hale's hands. Finally, Ernest mustered the courage to point out Hale in court. The good news is that Ernest no longer has the opportunity to inject poison into his wife, as she gradually improves. In court, when the prosecutor asked Ernest whether his decision to marry Mollie was motivated by wealth, Ernest gave a denial. This response could have two interpretations. Perhaps he truly loved his wife when he chose to marry her. Alternatively, it could be a strategic answer from someone in the defendant's position, intending to prevent his wife from accusing him, all for the sake of exoneration. In reality, Mollie had given Ernest a chance. When she chose to be with him, she sought his sincerity. Most white people chose to marry Osage for their wealth, but they would unhesitatingly conceal their intentions. Only little Ernest, in a candid manner, spoke the truth. In the end, Mollie just wanted to hear the truth from his mouth one more time, but the current Ernest no longer had the courage to speak the truth. The final verdict was that Ernest was sentenced to prison, but not for an extended period since his wife did not press charges against him. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter for killing the detective and received a 2-year sentence. Hale, convicted of serious crimes, was sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he managed to get out after just 2 years by bribing the prison warden.